Hey there, Sam Hind here, and welcome back in to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. This is going to be a bit of a fun episode because I was having a really fun conversation with our team this week, and we got talking about what are some of the questions that have been coming up on our page and in our groups from you guys wanting to know a little bit more about social media and marketing your businesses and ultimately growing your direct selling business. Of course, that's what we all want. But the question that came in that specifically sparked my interest was, what methods of communication are we currently missing out on because we are so focused on the here and now and what's trending? And it got me thinking, because although we specialize in social media and we love what social media can do for a business, I am a big lover of the old school. So we thought, why not do an episode for you guys on the old school communication methods, some clever ways to get people's attention and build relationships that makes you stand out. Now, we had a fair bit of fun with this because there were some things that came in here that some people in the team kind of went, of course, like, why aren't we doing that? Why don't we still do that? And so I wanted to jump on in and spend a bit of time going through some ideas with you that I'm going to hope spark a few little ideas in your brain about how it is that you can stand out, how you can build a relationship and make someone feel a bit special, build that long-term relationship with someone, and make it really easy, ultimately, for you to pick the phone up and have a real conversation and make some sales with someone. So let's have a little bit of a look at how it is that you can invest in the people around you and build those meaningful relationships. So let's dive on in. I've got some fun stuff to go through today, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what I do behind the scenes too. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so I mentioned that we're going to go a little bit old school. Well, what I want to do is talk to you about some clever ways to make people notice you. Now, putting posts on social media, very powerful. Reaching out on social media, important. Having in-home parties or events, if that's what your business does, powerful stuff. But what can you do that makes people pay attention? And the question is, what can you do that other people aren't doing? Because if we do the same thing as everybody else, although to a degree we need to do that, it makes it really hard to cut through the noise. So what if there were some really simple ways that you could get noticed? Well, I grew up in sales. Sales was my original job, the first thing I ever did. Funny story, I actually started my career in sales in a 100% commission-based door-to-door job. At 18, I fell into this. I did not know what I was getting myself in for, but I applied for this job in the newspaper, which is what you used to do back in the old school days. I applied for this job in the newspaper. It said 100% commission-based, uncapped earning potential. And I thought, as a kid straight out of high school, I'd moved to the big city. I thought this sounded like an incredible opportunity. So I jumped at it. Now, what I didn't know was this was going to be a baptism of fire. And anyone that's done a 100% commission-based door-to-door job before, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this was probably one of the greatest learning experiences of my life, all in a month period. Not even that, I don't think. I was one of their longest standing ever employees. I literally lasted 4 weeks, and that was it. But the thing that I learned really quickly with door-to-door, so what they used to do was fill the boot of my car with literally junk. I used to get given things like fake perfumes, kids' toys that I'm pretty sure never worked. We had, icky jewelry and bits and pieces that fell apart. And of course, the good old fashioned knife block set. So we had all of these sorts of things and really gimmicky things that we had to sell. So they would fill our boot every morning. We'd rock up at 6 a.m. in the morning. They'd fill the boot of the car. I'd chuck a duffel bag over my shoulder. I'd go to an allocated area. So it would usually be 2 or 3 block area. And it would be industrial or it would be businesses. And it would be our job to walk into each of those businesses. We didn't do residential, and I would have to sell this stuff. Now, if I came back at the end of the day and I hadn't sold anything, then that was it. I didn't make any money that day. And anything that I did sell, I had to decide, am I going to keep a profit margin in there for me, or am I going to undercut myself? So the company would always make their money because they had, let's say there was a perfume I had to sell. I would have to pay them $10 for that when I came back. But if I sold it for 20, I would keep the difference. And so naturally it was a really difficult role to be in, because as you walked into a business, you had literally 7 seconds, I discovered, because I timed this in the end, and I worked out I had 7 seconds to get someone's attention before they decided whether they were going to boot me out of their business or hear me out. And I got booted out of a lot of businesses before I realized something that was the key to being successful in this role and any job I've had thereafter. And that was, in that 7 seconds, I had to get them talking about themselves. I had to provide them some form of value or get them excited about a topic of conversation that they actually cared about. If I walked in the door and I said, "Hi, my name is Sam and I'm here to sell you blah, blah, blah," or "I want to show you this," which is what a lot of people did. They'd walk in and go, "I've got something I want to show you." Then straight away these businesses would be like, "Get out. We do not have time for this. Not interested." So I worked out I had to be a little bit memorable and I had to do things differently. What started to happen was, as I did this, people would remember me when I came back the next time, and they'd be willing to hear me out because I didn't make it all about me. The other thing was that I'd learned a few things about people and I started taking notes. So I would start to remember things like their kids' names, or where they go on holidays, or, something that might have been happening for them that week. And I would come back and I would refer back to, how was this? How did you go? This made me a little bit more memorable because it wasn't what everyone else did. Now, naturally, didn't last in this role for very long, but in the scheme of things, it was an eternity. But it was the greatest learning experience I could have ever had, because it reminded me that sometimes the old school stuff is really super powerful. Now, over my career going into other sales roles, there's something else that I noticed, and that was that when I took the time to invest in somebody, just to invest in the relationship, it was really powerful for the long term. So it would feel like a waste of time at the moment I was doing it. And I say that because if I was to invest in somebody with any of these ideas I'm about to give you, and there was no hidden agenda, it was like, I don't have time for this because I could be picking the phone up trying to make a sale or trying to get an appointment with somebody. But actually, those times that I did stop and invest in the relationship, over the long term, actually paid off far greater than the times that I knuckled down and just cold called like fury. So I wanted to give you 5 clever old school ways, and some of them aren't super old school, but I think we've still forgotten to do them in the way that we're going to talk about them today. But 5 old school ways for you to be memorable and to build those relationships and connect, and most importantly, communicate with your ideal customer. So the very first one of these is one of those that I think is not that old school, but again, I don't think many of us are doing it, and it's so powerful. I love it when people do this to me, and that is to use Messenger to check in. Now, I'm going to actually, the first 3 things I'm going to talk to you about here kind of all fit in together. So I'm going to give you the first 3 kind of together in a bunch. So the first one is to use Messenger to check in. The second one is to use email to check in. Now, when I say check in, I don't mean, do you need any products, or did you hear about our latest new release, or anything related to the business. The trick here is, are you checking in and making it about the customer? Now, I've spoken to you guys about these ones before, so I don't want to spend too long on them because they're not my most favorite way of checking in. But the reason I want to bring these up is because everybody has a different way of connecting. Some of you love picking the phone up. Some of you love email. Some of you love Messenger, and you need to do what comes naturally to you. So just because I tell you that sending emails can be a great way to communicate and connect doesn't mean that's the way for you to do it. So the first two were doing Messenger and doing email, and that's where you literally are checking in. Now, here's my favorite thing about this, and this is the bit that I love when people do this for me that really stands out. And this is probably more specific to Messenger or SMS, but I'm a big fan of leaving voice notes, little voice messages. Now, the reason I like this, and this is where, if you grab your phone and you go to send a messenger or a text message, you'll have a little microphone on there you can hold down and you can just speak, and it will send that message to the recipient. The reason I love that is because people know you haven't copied and pasted it to, the multitudes. The other thing I like about it is I'm all about saving time, and it's super duper quick. The last reason I love it so much is because it's personal and you can use someone's name. Now, everybody's name, everyone, it's the sweetest word in their vocabulary. So anytime you can use someone's name, they feel special, they prick their ears up, it makes them feel important. So if you could leave a really quick voice message for somebody that is not about having a hidden agenda, it is literally a check-in. So something along the lines of, hey, Sam, I just thought of you. I wanted to check in. We haven't spoken for ages. I remember last time we spoke, you were about to go away on holiday. I would love to hear how it all went. Just want to make sure you're doing all right and would love to hear from you. Now, something like that makes somebody feel like you care, you've remembered, they matter, you've used their name, they know that it wasn't given to everybody. It makes them feel special. Now, you can word that whatever way matters for you, whatever way makes sense for you. But a little voice message like that can be so powerful. And how quick is that? It's sent, it's done, it's dusted. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a script, although it might be easier for you. You might want to just jot down a rough, what you're going to say to each person just so that you get comfortable. But once you've practiced it a few times, it starts to roll and flow. Now, I did speak to a leader in one of our network marketing companies a few months ago, and she gave a really awesome tip with this, and I love it from an organizational point of view. She goes through the alphabet. So what she does is each day that she's allocated to doing this, she'll go through a different letter in the alphabet, and she will leave a voice message to everybody in that letter in the alphabet in her messenger or in her phone contacts list, so that she knows that she's not leaving any stone unturned. And she makes sure that it's about actually caring and actually checking in. So the first two are email and messenger, and we're going to put text message in that little bracket there because I think that that's a really good one. And doing voice messages. I love that. But again, do text if that's what's better for you. But these are some little old school ways that aren't really old school. The email might be a little bit, people have forgotten about sending emails that aren't all about promotional emails. Think about what you love to receive. I know I love opening up my inbox and seeing an email that is not from a company, that's not a bulk sent email. When I see an email that goes, how are you? It just makes me feel like someone cares. There's someone out there that cares. And so I love getting those emails. It just kind of makes your day when you know that someone has taken that time to send something just to you that matters just to you. So email can be a good way of doing that. But again, it's a busy place, so it can also get a little bit missed. Another one that I love, and this is my number 3. So we've sort of talked about messenger and email as the first two. My number 3 is phone calls. Now, I think a lot of us have forgotten to pick the phone up and actually ring people, but phone calls can be a really great way of getting the feeling across. And I say that because you can misunderstand an intention or words or inflection in an email, but when someone's using their voice and the inflection in their voice and they're applying care or they're asking a question and you hear the highs and the lows and the pitch and all of that, you can really get the feeling across so much better than you can in any form of text. The other thing is it can be a lot quicker to have a phone call, but it's also more meaningful. So phone calls can be great, but not everyone loves a phone call. So again, you've got to work in with what works for you. Can I just say though that if you are going to take the time to make a phone call, make sure you leave a voice message, because I think we're kind of programmed to, as soon as that voice message option comes up, we go, and hang up. I know that I've fallen into that category many times over the years, and I remind myself every so often that it's also about what we call seeding. So it's about coming across your customer's path in a variety of different ways. Now, just because they didn't answer the phone doesn't mean that leaving a message is going to be a waste of time. They still remember that you reached out. And even if they don't come back to you, they heard your voice, they heard your check-in. It's kind of like leaving the little voice message via messenger or text or something. It is memorable and it is a way for you to cross their path. So leaving a voice message can be very powerful. And I remember having a motivational speaker back when I was in my marketing career. About 10 years ago, we had a motivational speaker come along and they talked to us about the power of what we call touch points, which is, each time you have an opportunity to connect with your customers in various different ways and not to underestimate the little things. So things like leaving a voice message to you might not seem like much, but to them might actually be a really big deal. Just because they don't come back to you doesn't mean it didn't matter. You know that sometimes you can reach out to somebody and just the act of reaching out is all you ever need to do. When you tell somebody, let me know if there's anything I can do to help, or, my thoughts and my wishes are with you when they're going through something tough. You know that you don't necessarily need to do any more than that for them to feel like you care and that they matter. And it's the same with leaving voice messages. Sometimes just the act makes them feel great because they know that you've taken the time to reach out. The last two I want to talk to you about are my two favorites. I left these to last because I'm so excited to talk about these because I actually really enjoy these two. Now, the first one I want to talk about is one that I'm going to show you some examples of what I do with both of these, but it's one that over the years has served me really well, and it massively breaks through the noise because it's old school. And I was chatting with our team about this the other day, and they were like, wow, that is so old school. Like, one of them when I talked to them about this one, she was like, someone actually, you know what? I'm not going to get ahead of myself. We're going to put this one in with number 5. I'm going to give you this example because some of you are going to laugh at this. So let's talk about number 4. I don't want to get too far ahead. Let's talk about number 4. Number 4 is sending a letter or a postcard or a card to just somebody, anybody. Now, you can do this to your customers for sure, but it's also really valuable to do this to people that maybe you haven't connected with for a long time, maybe to people that you've lost contact with or that have impacted you in some way, or maybe just someone that you've met for the very first time, and to follow up with a card or a postcard or a letter so that you stick in their brain. And believe me, when someone gets something in the mail, I love getting letters in the mail. I bet you love getting letters in the mail. So what's the chance that your customers also love getting letters in the mail? I have a really hard time, by the way, throwing away. From a number of you guys over the last, probably more so over the last 6 months, but over the last couple of years, I've received a number of letters in the post. And I don't mean more just little cards, little thank you cards, even sometimes little gifts from your range. And although the gift means a lot, the card to me is the most powerful part, because it's when someone leaves a little message, they've taken the time to handwrite. And I think handwriting is the important part here. When they've taken the time to handwrite the message, it's relatively heartfelt and it really sticks in the memory. So here's what I do. I actually collect. I love to collect just cards. So one of the things I do is every now and again, you can go to the cheap stores and they'll have like the $1 cards on those racks. Whenever I see those, I stock up. Like, I'll just spend $20. I'll get 20 cards and I put them in a box. I have a couple of different locations I keep these because I want to make sure that anytime I've got it on my heart to do this or I want to show some gratitude. By the way, this is really powerful for you as much as it is for them, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I will grab one of these from home, or I'll have some in my bag, and I will just write one out whenever I think about it. So I love doing that. The other thing that I do is I also collect like little boxes of cards, and I get some really beautiful ones that you might get from the airport, which has always been a great location for me to go shopping because I used to spend so much time there. So, like the little, these are the Kiki K ones, but you don't need to get expensive ones. You can grab just the stuff that's, on sale, because people, particularly throughout the year when there's no special occasion going on, like when it's not Christmas or something like that, cards tend to be a lot cheaper. So I love stocking up on them and I just have them floating around. I also like to have some thank you cards about as well, because to me it's important to thank people when you can, even for the little things, so that number one, they know that you feel grateful. But I think gratitude is a really important thing for us each to do as often as we can. I find myself being a really ungrateful sod sometimes. How's that for an old school word? I figured old school, I should use some old school words in here today. So I feel like an ungrateful sod. And I say that because sometimes we're so focused on what people aren't doing and what the world isn't doing and what isn't happening and what's going wrong. And we forget to look at the things that actually are going right. And I realized this morning, actually, that was a really big one. I thought today's a day where I need to start writing some gratitude cards out because I need to remind myself of the amazing things that are happening around me. So writing out a gratitude letter or a gratitude card every now and again is powerful. Now, here's how I go about doing this. Whenever I've got, and I actually keep in my handbag, I always keep a couple of these all of the time. And when I travel, my laptop bag's always got a box of these in it. And what I do is if I'm on an airplane, which again, I haven't been for a long time, so I've been a bit ungrateful recently, but when I am on an airplane, I'll challenge myself to write, say, 3 cards out. Now, here's the trick. Sometimes it's obvious who you should be sending a gratitude letter or a card to, or a thank you card, or just a check-in card saying, hey, how are you, thinking of you? But what about the people that you haven't thought about for a long time? I love kind of going back down memory lane, and there is method to my madness here, but I love going down memory lane and thinking about the people that have impacted my life over the years, even specifically, and here's where I challenge myself, the people that maybe the relationship didn't end well. So maybe the bit that sticks out in my mind is I'm annoyed at that person for whatever reason because, they did this, or, it might have been an old boss that ended up firing me. And not that I got fired from many jobs. I did get fired from one because I was working in an ice creamery and I just simply couldn't get the ice cream straight on the top of the cone and he fired me, quite rightfully so too. But I do have some gratitude around that because he showed me that I shouldn't spend the rest of my life working in an ice creamery. Imagine how differently my life would be right now. So there's always something to be grateful for, and I like to try to write out a little gratitude letter to somebody I haven't connected with for decades or years. It's a bit fun because you get to go back in time, but also there's something nostalgic and really beautiful about thinking about the positive things about somebody when our brain is in so many ways wired to think about the negatives. So, and I think it surprises them too, and because usually people are not oblivious to the fact that your relationship maybe didn't end well. So imagine how amazing it is for that person who felt maybe a bit bad about firing you to receive, 10 years later, a card in the mail telling them about how they had a positive impact on your life and how you still remember that. So weird one, I know, but here's the method. This is why I'm saying there's a method to my madness. Here's the method to my madness. I've done this over the years, and some of those people, not everybody, and this is where if they don't come back to you, you have to do it without an expectation. But some of those people have come back to me and the reconnection has been so incredibly powerful for both me and them, but also sometimes for the business because that reconnection has led to new business. And that's not what my intention was when I sent the card, but it's how it ended up. Now, just think, if you could reconnect with somebody or if you could tell them how thankful you are or how you just happen to be thinking of them and maybe the last time you had a connection with them, just imagine the positive impact, that the ripple effect of that. It makes you feel good. It makes them feel good. And who else might it also make feel good? Because it's highly likely that doesn't just stop with you and them. So I think if we did more of that sort of stuff, this world would probably be a better place. And I can tell you that I love that feeling that I'm left with after I've written out a bit of gratitude. So I just want to put that one out there because not only is it old school and a great way of communicating to send out a letter or a card or a postcard, but I think there's something powerful for us in that as well. So there's that. Now, that's investing in your business long term because it's not likely you're going to get a sale tomorrow from that. But trust me, it's worth the 10 or 15 minutes it might take you every now and again. And it doesn't have to be long-winded. It doesn't have to be challenging, but you know what? I think you'll surprise yourself if you give that one a go. So that's how I do that one. Now, the last one is probably my favorite, and because this one actually seeds one of my values, but I know it's going to seed some of yours too, because we actually spoke about this in a live on our Facebook page the other day, and a bunch of people said to me when I mentioned I love doing this that they also love it too. And it kind of goes part and parcel with the industry that we're in, right? Because you guys, some of you have got the ability to do this really easily. So the last one is random gift giving. Now, there are a couple of important points here that you got to be really careful about. The first is it can't be, again, with an agenda. So it can't be around giving gifts that are designed to sell something. But there's also ways that you can do this where it doesn't cost anything. So I want to give you a couple of little ideas because I love, and this is where this came up because I think I might have mentioned actually on the podcast about the habits I'm embarrassed to admit. And one of them is the hoarding of gifts. So I want to share with you a few of the things that I hoard and why I hoard them and what I do with them. So every now and again, I like to have the ability to be able to send something to somebody just because. And it's even more powerful when it's done without a reason. So because it's unexpected. Now, this is how, remember, people will not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. So when someone receives this little random gift in the mail, or even dropped in, if you've got the ability to do that, depending on who it is, how powerful is that? I remember the day, and I actually keep this book with me everywhere. I remember the day that I received this little book called Letters from Jesus, actually. It was dropped into my office. And this was right back at the very beginning of my rededication to my Christian journey, which is the journey that I've chosen for my life. And this particular book was dropped off to my office with a little note. I knew who it was from, except that the person dropped it off without any intention of telling me that it was from them. It's just that I saw them walk past the window when they did it. And they wrote on the inside of this little book, and it was a little dedication book. You just look at it every day, actually. Oh, what do you know? It's right here on my desk. I was like, I'm sure it's here somewhere. Jesus Calling, it's called. Anyway, he wrote on the inside of the cover, presented to Sam from God. And I thought that was just, and regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, it doesn't matter. The point is that it was such a memorable gift. This is a bit faded now because it's been sitting on my desk and used for so many years. This was about 8 years ago. And it's one of those things that stood out to me because it was a gift that didn't have anything attached to it. And it meant something. That person had just thought about me and thought, you know what, I think this will be memorable. So and do you know, it's not just the gifts that cost money that have this effect. So here are some ideas, and this is where I started telling you guys before in my weird way of conversing when I do these podcasts. We had a funny conversation with the staff the beginning of the week where we talked about this idea, and we talked about gift giving and some of the things that, I hoard and collect in order to give out. And they said, well, what about gifts that don't cost any money? And I said, well, actually, I've got a few that I like doing that with too. One of them is checks. And they went, I don't even know. One of our team members who is she must be in her late 20s, mid 20s, I reckon. And she said, I don't even know how to fill a check out. I've never received one and I've never sent one. And she goes, how do you even fill out a check? And it made me feel a bit old for a moment. But I did think that was kind of funny because we really are talking old school today, right? So, but then as I explained this concept, she held one up and she showed me one that she'd received that week that she didn't consider to be a check, but it's exactly what it was. And it was a check to pay out later. And it was the one that she had received was a check that said, this entitles you, or this card entitles you to a Zoom activity of your choice. And it was something that had been gifted to her by a friend. And I thought, what a brilliant idea to give someone something that, is essentially just your time. It could be that you're gifting them with a check, something that you're going to pay out that might be worth money. It might be that you're giving them a particular gift or taking them out for a coffee or whatever that looks like. But it could also be something like, a hug. It could be, just a coffee date, whatever that looks like. You can have some fun with it. So little checks, something that they can have in the future. And right now, given the season that we're in, how cool would that be if you could pop in the mail or drop in someone's letterbox or send with a card a little check for them to go for coffee with you when you can go for coffee again is a really nice way of making someone feel a bit special. So there were checks. Another one that I like to do that doesn't cost any money is seeds. Now, you got to be careful where you send these because you can't always send seeds interstate. I know that in Tasmania where we are, there's a lot of restrictions around that. But I do love giving seeds or even another weird one for me, I grow avocados from seeds. So I pop them in jars at home on my windowsill, and when they sprout, I'll give them to people. I put them in a little pot and I'll give them. And I've given so many of them away and people love them. And then when I go see them, I can see their little avocado tree growing. And I know that it's something that they treasure because I put time and thought and effort into, but it didn't cost me anything. I've just taken the seed out of an avocado I've eaten and I've plopped it into a jar, grown it, and then put it in some soil. And it takes a little bit of time, mind you, that one, but you could do that with succulents and all sorts of things. There are a few other things that I love to give though that I do hoard when I come across them. This is my latest little purchase. I grabbed about 4 or 5 of these the other day when I came across them. The Little Book of Happiness, and it has a whole lot of beautiful little motivational quotes and jokes and, sayings and all sorts of things in here. And this is one that, again, as I see fit, I could just pop that in the post out to someone that I want to show a bit of love to. I love collecting little books and things that I think are really great little gifts. This is one that I mentioned to you guys on my page the other day, The Panic Button by Tammy Kirkness, who is a gorgeous motivational speaker in the direct selling industry that I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of times. And Tammy released that book this year, and I think that's another really great one, particularly if you've got people in your world. And you can get these actually just from Target, but you can get them online. But if you've got someone in your world that's going through some challenges, this is all about, it says here, a step-by-step guide to neutralize worry, overthinking, and anxiety. So all of these are really great little ideas. You'll come up with a ton for yourself. I did have to have a bit of a giggle at the whole check thing because I love that idea, but maybe some people don't know what a check is. So there's some old school ideas for you guys. Just to reiterate, we're going to go back, have a bit of a look at them. So really quickly, we've got email check-ins. We've got messenger check-ins. Remember, don't have an agenda. Just come in and check in with people. Using voice messages, voice notes, picking up the phone, having a phone call. And then my favorites are writing a card, a letter, or a postcard of either gratitude or just touching base. Could just be a letter, just letting people know what's going on in your world, finding out what's going on in theirs, just, pen pal it. And then the last one is random gifts, just to show someone that you care and that you're thinking of them. So these are all things that are likely to stick in someone's mind. Why? Because most people aren't doing them. They're taking the easy option, which is Facebook and Instagram. That stuff is quick, but you know what? It doesn't invest in the long term, and it's not so memorable because everyone's doing it. So there's a few little old school ideas there. I love them. I use them, have used them for years. And do you know what? They've been some of the most powerful relationship builders in both my business, and I know many of those that are in our courses and that we've worked with as well. So I challenge you. Give one a go. Try something a little bit different. Grab yourself, a couple of cards, pop them in your bag and challenge yourself maybe once a week to write out 1 or 2 of these and just see, does it have an impact? It might not have an impact on the person at the other end, but if it has an impact on you, well, I think that's a win. So we're going to leave that one with you today, guys. That is going old school. So I hope that that's been a little bit inspiring for some of you, a bit of a breath of fresh air because we're not talking about the social media stuff today. But you know what? These are some powerful things that you can do, and I guarantee you, if you give a couple of them a try, you might see that you get a different result. So get in there and have a go. But in the meantime, guys, God bless. Have an amazing week. It's been great chatting with you all again, and I look forward to seeing you again on next week's podcast. Bye for now.